dealing with guilt. And as you and I know from the workshop, if you attended the workshop last week, dealing with guilt is no easy situation. And so I want to take this time to thank the people who attended. I have a list of the questions here of the items that came up for people. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for entrusting me with your curiosity and your wonderment, because there can be so much shame attached to what we experience that we can often shut down. So people have been asking about what to do when we experience guilt around a parent. And as I mentioned in the mastermind class, when we have guilt surrounding our parents, that can be particularly complex because it means that that has become a normal way of our being. So it's set in us from our younger years, and so there's a norm and a comfortableness about it, and this often sets us up for relationships where we may also be guilt tripped. So it's complex, and it's also highly likely that if you've had a parent that guilt trips you, that that may well also be a function in many other aspects of your life. And so what that is about, which is what I spoke about in the mastermind, is learning to befriend that sense of guilt. And also we have to learn to choose our battles, really being clear about choosing our battles, because some people are incredibly difficult. And actually they're almost our nemesis, you know, like Superman and Kryptonite. Like, we need to become really conscious of that, incredibly conscious of that, because that is not healthy for us. So we pay attention, really paying attention to ourselves. And if you've got any questions around that, feel free to ask your girl Key, because you are not alone. We've got other people here asking about being guilt tripped by partners, husbands. Now, this can be particularly insightful because it's not only the guilt that's going to be the problem. You're probably in the grips of a toxic marriage, and uncoupling from that marriage may well be the place that you're at. It really depends on where you're at in the relationship, because some of us, we want to hold on. Some of us feel really insecure about letting go, and so we hold on with all our might. Some of us need the confirmation and the external validation from somebody else to make us feel all right. So when you have a need to be externally validated, you are incredibly vulnerable, and you have an increased likelihood of becoming depressed and anxious because your opinion of you doesn't matter. So you're forever looking outside of yourself for the thumbs up. Not great for your greatness. And this is how we develop an inauthentic way of being. And inauthenticity and depression go hand in hand. Make sense? Got any questions? Let your girl Key know. Because this is important for us to understand. What do you do when somebody has a lifestyle out of you is also fundamental. Because remember, these are the people who are going to be adverse to your growth. Some of us have this expectation that the people that like family and friends who have benefited from our overgiving or being guilt tripped will be there championing our change. That's not true. This is where you begin to find out who the people are who are there for you and who isn't there for you. But also remember, for many of us guilt trippers, we can also be people pleasers. If you're a people pleaser and that makes sense to you, let me know. Because people pleasing and guilt trips go hand in hand. And it's important that you learn to understand what is the value for you in being a people pleaser. How do you know you have the Holy Spirit? You tell me, sister. I'm not on the topic of holy. I don't regard myself as holy man or holy woman. So I'm not sure how that leads into the notion of guilt. dealing with guilt. But Megan, if you've got, it sounds like you already have the answers. So feel free to post them. Here we're talking about, you've got questions about why did I allow this person to pull me down? Often we allowed people to pull us down unconsciously because we thought we were pulling them up. And if you have a tendency, people pleasing, guilt, people who get guilt tripped also have an issue being people pleasers. And we often describe ourselves as fixers. And so this is a beautiful combination where we often go for people who are bruck up and mash up. And we think if we love them enough, do enough, go above and beyond enough, that they see our value and our worth, and that they will change and become the person that we want them to be. In this instance, you have a reality fantasy distortion. And you holding on to your fantasy is one of the reasons why many people stay in toxic relationships for many, many years. So we need to check, what is your fantasy reality distortion? Like I said, many of us are trying to pull people up. We pick up demolition projects and we become overwhelmed with doer-uppers. It's almost like the property game. We must pay attention. We must pay attention to ourselves. These are important questions. What is it about? Why is it important for me to be a fixer? Because remember, when you're a fixer, who's able to support you? You have set yourself up in a dynamic that is not helpful. I've also got questions here in relation to women being, women falling in love and marrying men, and then there's an immigration issue and feeling used, that somebody has used them in order to get their stay. Well, this is, we need to be, this is tricky, let's be frank. And, you know, if you've had a shotgun wedding, you didn't get to know the individual, it can be particularly tricky. And you may have been seduced. I always see anyone who tries to seduce me as a bit of a red flag. What's that all about? Someone being overly nice, bit of a red flag. What is that about? And this is the benefit of, especially difficult for people pleasers, is learning to say no. Many of us are scared of our no's because we're scareful and fearful of abandonment. And so we hold on, and this is not healthy for us. Question here, key. How do you respond when after you tell them that you want what you want, they start listing all they did for you? If you tell somebody what you would like, and they are then able to reel off what they are basically inadvertently telling you no. What I would like from you is X. Yeah, but I've done X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F, G for you. So they're not actually attuning to your question. And if they're not attuning to your question, my question to you would be, what are you holding out for? What are you holding on for? If I ask for something I need, and then you want to tell me everything you've done for me, then clearly you're not listening to me in the here and now. Potentially you're trying to guilt trip me and make me feel bad. That's not great for your greatness. And we've also touched on the impact on our bodies, because you have to remember, my people, when we are people pleasing, when we are guilt tripped, remember I said there's a correlation between guilt trips, people pleasing, and being fixers. There's a whole relationship around that. We need to be mindful that this will have a consequence. Another person in last week's mastermind said, I fear the backlash. Well, you should fear the backlash, because when you stop being agreeable, when you stop saying yes, when you stop prioritizing everybody else, and they can no longer drain from you and leech from you, there will be a backlash. And that's why whenever time I'm ever working with someone, I'm always clear, what are the power dynamics you are exposed to? What are the ways that people might squash you? You have to become conscious of that, because people will want to squash you when you're no longer obedient and compliant. pay attention. It's understandable we fear the backlash, but always be concerned, what is the power over you? Is it financial, emotional? There may even be blackmail. Another question, Key, how do I deal with confrontation when I don't like it? For many people who tend to be guilt-tripped or who describe themselves as empathic, your natural nature is to be conflict avoidant. And so what happens is you smooth things over. So you're a smooth overer, which again means you're disproportionately focused externally, not great for your greatness. I think what we need to do is to understand that conflict is a part of life. And so maybe one aspect might be about deciding the forum that you might choose to begin to have that conversation. Some of us, that may be that we might write it, you might send it in a text, think through your thoughts and make a considered reply. That can be a barrier to help you. For some people I've worked with, we've actually got a third person in the room so that you don't feel manipulated, or that it gives you the space. This happens in couples therapy, that we give you the space to be able to be articulate about things that maybe you found difficult to express before. So if you're conflict avoidant, it's also growing to understand that actually conflict is a part of life. Now, that doesn't mean we become skippity, happy about conflict, because remember, some people do high conflict very well. They can be very balanced, and you might discombobulate. And that's absolutely fine, because we all handle conflict differently. But I would encourage you to think about a medium where you are much more likely to feel at ease, and writing a letter can be one way to do that. And if you describe yourself as a giver, you need to think about that as being a red flag. Usually givers attract takers. So pay attention to yourself. Pay attention. This is how the guilt trippers end up having control and dominion over life. Here we got a question. She guilt trips me because I tell it like it is. Well, if you are being truthful and somebody guilt trips you and punishes you for being truthful, my question to you would be, what causes you to stay in the dynamic? What causes you to stay in dynamics that you might regard as toxic? Pay attention to yourself. Often some of us, we are manifesting things we don't want. And then you wonder why you're not able to live the life of your dreams. Keeley, I lost myself in my relationship years ago. How do I begin to find myself? If that is the case for you, I would encourage you to sign up for a one-to-one call. I need to understand a little bit more about you, how you've become who you are, and how you've ended up totally losing yourself, which would mean that you're disproportionately focused on somebody else's needs. This is where depression and despair may kick in. Not great for you. And like I said, that grayrocking is an also powerful skill. If you are highly agreeable and end up saying yes, one way to deal with being guilt tripped is to grayrock. And if you've got any questions around that, please feel free to post. I'm always happy to answer. Grayrocking is a powerful tool. Like I said, when I asked about Key, how have you manifest change in your life? Like I said, we already manifest. We're already master manifestors. We just manifest what we don't want. How can you reclaim that power to begin to refocus on developing your own ideas, your own passions and insight? That's the skill. Reclaiming of your energy. What questions you have about your own life and how guilt controls you. Because the reality is, if guilt controls your life, you will be sad and you will be depressed. Another person, key, how do I stop the backlash from controlling me? Because the backlash, when you become less agreeable, is another aspect that we need to pay attention to. The backlash is something you have to observe and hold firm and don't resist it. Your knee-jerk reaction is going to want to kick in. This is where meditation is incredibly helpful for us, because it helps us to remain still. How can you remain in stillness? We need to stop reacting and learn how to observe. When you constantly react, you give away your power. Any questions you have around that, feel free to help me. Archie Girl Key. Another question here. My husband, when I first met him 17 years ago, he was living with his sister, practically homeless with no leave to remain in the UK. And I fell for him, helping him and trying to help him, because he said he was different from every other man I've ever been with. And he was different. He was actually worse. He went outside of the marriage and got a child with someone else, and then had the cheek to talk down to me after telling this woman a lot of lies about me. I'm so hurt, I'm so stressed, and out of this 2 brain aneurysms, and ended up with brain surgery. So how do I get out of my situation? Well, firstly, you may have been subjected to toxic relationships for so long that it will benefit you to get some serious support, because clearly this has taken you to the brink of despair. There is always the Samaritans you can talk to. If you're based in the UK, that is a free phone number. Feel free to Google that and you can begin to talk to somebody. But also it may be beneficial to you to start to get that help, either with me or somebody else. Because when a toxic relationship has been going on for this long, it's highly likely that you have become used to the abuse. And so it's about, how do you begin your healing journey? And there will be agencies in every borough in the UK will have a domestic abuse support service. Google and start to engage with those services, start to take responsibility and start that journey. Start small. And that might just be about having a Google. You don't have to take any action. And then maybe you start tomorrow, you make a small action. Because 17 years, and if it's having a physical impact on your health, which for many people it does, especially if they don't deal with the difficultness, then this is going to, sounds like it's slowly destroying you and killing you slowly. So we need to be mindful of that. We need to be really crystal clear about that. And this is the last page of questions that people have for me. Keeley, why am I so soft, trusting and caring? Well, that's because it's your nature. But also you might, as I said before, you might pick people who are fixer-uppers. You might pick up these demolition projects that you think you can change. And as long as you keep doing that, you're going to be doing yourself a great disservice, because it will always be about them and never about you. Question. Why do I keep doing this to myself? Well, why do I keep getting myself into these toxic relationships? How do I keep doing it to myself? Well, there's a good reason for it. Often the reasons are unconscious. And the skill is bringing what is unconscious into your awareness, so you begin to make more sense to yourself. One of the things with guilt trippers is we're really good at articulating what other people do, their story, why do they treat me like this? We're really good at that, but we're not always great about understanding our own motives. Why we do this, why we do that. That's the skill to develop. That's the awareness we need to develop. What is it about you that motivates you? Because remember, if you're a fixer, if you like to fix people, then you're going to constantly be looking for brokenness. And whilst you're looking for brokenness, you're missing your own brokenness. You're looking outside of the self. You want people to do the work on themselves, but do you do the work on you? What is your need to fix others all about? So when we talk about looking at you and who you are, it is essential we focus inwards. As I said in the group, the 3 principles that I encourage people to understand, anyone who works with me, is always about acceptance, self-awareness, and making empowered choices. When we are guilt tripped, we make disempowering choices and we focus on the needs of other people. And if this makes sense to you and you want to understand more, then feel free, come over to the channel, sign up, understand more. Let's have a conversation. Let me help you to understand you more and ultimately what you need to do to live a fulfilling life. This is my live on YouTube, answering the questions that came through on the Overcoming Guilt workshop. I hope it's been of benefit to you. If you have a question, feel free to let me know. I'm always happy to take video requests. Do take care of you, because if you don't, who will? Peace.